Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for our second State of Enterprise webinar and our first State of Automation webinar. We'll be kicking off in just a minute. We're just gonna let everyone dial in. But just a reminder, you're all here on mute and your video is turned off. And if you have a question, just put it in the Q&A function and we'll get to it during our Q&A section of the webinar. Okay, I think we probably have most people now. Thanks for joining us for our State of Automation webinar. You guys are all muted and your video is turned off, but if you have a question, we'll get to it at the Q&A section of the webinar, so just put it into the Q&A function of Zoom. And with that, Kelley, I can kick it over to you.
Thank you, Kira. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. My name is Kelley Mack and I'm a part of the Workbench team. For those who are unfamiliar with Workbench, we are an early stage enterprise VC based in New York City. Being based here, we have the unique opportunity of being close to many of the Fortune 500 that call New York City home, such as financial services, media, telecom, pharma, and others. And this proximity allows us to have ongoing conversations with these leading technologists on major trends, priorities, and pain points in the enterprise. As our motto goes, great things happen at the intersection of suits and hoodies. So we've kicked off a series of webinars highlighting important enterprise themes that we've been tracking. Just 2 weeks ago, we had our first one on the hot topic of AI with Verizon and Pitney Bowes. And I'm honored today to be joined by other esteemed guests to talk about the state of automation. We have CIT, Aon, and Alkymi. And so to kick off and get started, I'd like to go through a round of introductions, and I'll call on each participant, but if you can give us a quick one-liner on yourself, role, company, and then also something about you that is not on your LinkedIn. So with that, let's start with Elise.
Hi, Elise Granda. I'm the Director of Automation at CIT. I've been here about 2.5 years, and previously I was at a large financial institution for about 14 years, working with various technology tools. Fun fact about me, I'm a glass artist, and after years of going to business training where they tell you to find your bliss and be the change you wanted to be, for me it literally meant literally be the change I wanted to see and to be able to make things in glass that I wanted to have. So sometimes those training things are actually literally true for you. For me, that's what it was.
That's awesome. Next, Harald.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Alkymi, and we spend all of our time focusing on driving automation into different enterprise workflows, that capturing and transforming data in emails and in documents. I'm actually joining the webinar from Denmark, and I guess the fun fact about me is that I grew up in the southern part of Denmark in a Christmas tree farm, and I was thinking about what kind of icebreakers. It's the middle of the Christmas here. There is no Christmas tree, but the closest thing I could come was this little potted plant here. But it's not as as nice to look at as I'm sure the glass art that you're making, at least. But at least there's a fact that you won't find about me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And then next, Preeti.
Hi, I'm Preeti Asthana. I'm with Aon and based in Chicago. I lead global programs for innovation and partnerships, and I'm responsible for partnership development. Been here for 10 years. I have my prior experience in management consulting and marketing. Fun fact about me, as an alternate career, I would love to be a children's storyteller. And if I didn't have to pay the bills, I'd probably be a children's story writer, illustrator, narrator. So maybe someday in the future.
That's great. You're all making me rethink my own passions, and maybe I should take up a hobby. But I'll hopefully pick something up after this. So cool. Thanks all of you for being panelists on our for this discussion today. Kira, if you can click to the next slide real quick. I just want to give a brief overview for the audience of the topics that we're going to be going over. So automation is quite a hyped up technology that is being used by the enterprise, but I know that a lot of folks have questions around how and where it's being used and what the limits to some of its function is. So what we'll do today is first talk on high level, as well as dig deep into some of the use cases that some of you folks are working on, and then go through some of the major challenges that folks are working through. And then lastly, talk through some of the hype and reality and then predictions on this space. For the folks in the audience, you can feel free to use the Q&A function that we have here in Zoom to ask any questions. We do have a Q&A section for the end that will take 10 to 15 minutes to go through, but feel free to anytime during the conversation to pop in with any questions. So to kick off, let's start with Preeti. So Aon is in the insurance industry, and insurers are rethinking how to distribute, price, underwrite, and manage claims, along with rethinking how the business works. So there are a lot of new emerging technologies that help address these needs, and automation being one of them. How is automation being used at Aon? I would love to hear, what are some of the use cases that you've found valuable there?
So the way we think about, how automation is impacting our industry, I think we need to take a step back and think about the macroeconomic trends that are actually impacting. If they look at climate change, pandemics, gig economy, the way we are interacting, that's basically creating a model which is very different and creating a net new. Now this new model needs to be, non-transactional, which has been the case previously. So as we look at how that continuous interaction with clients takes place, what Aon has done is to invest in a data and analytics services platform, which basically looks at the whole value chain of how we are interacting with our clients. That is very common with, how the industry and key players in this industry are also looking at, if you look at most of the incumbents. This is primarily to create that real-time insights with clients, getting those real-time insights from clients. And it's focused on how we're using curated data assets, technology, expertise to build those tailored solutions for clients. Now, just to give you where Aon really sees that opportunity, it's throughout the value chain of how we are ingesting data, storing that, processing it, and actually disseminating the information that can be used. One of the solutions that we've looked into is a data harvesting solution where we've used unstructured, we've actually harvested unstructured data and utilized it for our underwriting models. So that's just one of the examples, but there are several others across claims and distribution, combination of build by partner technologies in automation. So those are some of the areas how Aon has been thinking about it.
Great. And I'd love to hear, if you don't mind me digging in here on that unstructured data use case, what is possible now that wasn't possible, say, 2, 3, 5 years ago?
So, so what we've done is, we had a ton of data that was just sitting around waiting to be manually entered into systems. Now, with this new, capability that we've built in and partnering with emerging technology companies, which have been specifically focused on these problems, we are now able to utilize about 95% of that unstructured data that was not being utilized previously, and input those in some of our underwriting models. Now that has had a major impact as to how we look at analytics, moving from, historically understanding what the data has been to being more predictive in nature and actually being prescriptive in some forms if you look at how how it has evolved. So that's one way of thinking about, and this is just, we are just scratching the surface right now. There are, so many areas within the organization where we feel that we can still make better use of unstructured data that is stored in various formats.
Great. So at least CIT has been around for over 100 years. I'm sure there are a lot of places where you have manual processes and automation can play a big part in extracting a lot more value. Can you give us 1 to 2 use cases that you're seeing at your organization?
So we have a toolkit that we use and we have workflow engines. We use Pegasystems, other applications as well that really can provide automation and API and bringing data and supporting our service centers. But we also are invested in test automation, something that isn't necessarily the thing everyone talks about. It's never really the hot topic, but test automation is huge. And it not only provides you with the ability to, support your releases and keep, understand your data, but it also provides efficiencies back to the business and the technology teams with, no harm testing and, new release testing. And when you're in an environment, such as ours, where we just had an acquisition and we have a lot of movement, test automation becomes a really big piece. And, that for us, that's a major, focus, the test automation and then workflow. And then we also have, robotics with OCR. That's something that we use, to support specific strategic initiatives, but all together, that's our toolkit. We don't focus in just one piece. We don't want to be a robotic shop. We want to use the right tool for the right need.
That's a really good point. Our automation technologies are not just relegated for business processes. They can be in the application development domain and infrastructure and the security domain. So Harald, you are building a startup in the automation space, and part of it is helping asset managers and financial institutions automate the document processing and intelligence lifecycle. When you're working with these clients, how do you define and measure success of an automation program? Or help them measure the success?
Yeah, no, what's been interesting has been, I guess, the change that we've seen in the last couple of years. I think when, when we started out, a lot of clients focused maybe on processes where, you could kind of drive 100% automation and focus on kind of straight through processing. When, of course, then the success is about, can you automate a task 100%. And I think what's been interesting is, instead of maybe the more tactical perspective on success as, one task being automated, has been clients focusing more on the outcome. So if you're on this journey of trying to digitally transform a process and you say, well, I need to onboard my clients more effectively. What does that mean in terms of the outcome? What is the experience I want to give the clients when they interface with my company? Do I want them to wait for 1 week and submit all kinds of documentation that then makes its way through operations and eventually the client is sort of contacted and onboarded? Or do you want to get much closer to something that's sort of a real-time onboarding experience for the client. And so if you take that lens on it, it's more exciting for us to be part of a bigger transformation or more strategic initiative with clients that have that vision for how they want to transform and change their business processes. And I think a lot of clients have come around to that. And I think the current environment is perfectly suited for, taking a more, let's say an agile view of your processes and say that having that agility in your processes gives you a much better stance for being able to take an impact and quickly change if suddenly people can't come into the office or you can't go into your data center and service your systems or other kinds of obstacles that almost all of our clients have been facing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can name names, but would love to understand how what you're building in this space, how one of your customers might be using you for a particular outcome, as you mentioned, and what that outcome is.
Yeah, so give you an example, we have a large, Fortune 100 financial services firms that we're working with to, kind of on account rollovers. And so, clients will have existing account statements full of financial data that will, kind of trigger a transfer of funds. And that workflow has been very manual, full of errors. So that's been an opportunity to provide much better customer service and of course acquire more assets faster when you can move potentially billions of new assets onto the platform without this laborious manual first step. Another example is in private markets data, or sometimes referred to as alternatives. We've been working with SimCorp. It's a large platform, a fintech platform. It's been around, have hundreds of large clients that are helping on all the sort of laborious accounting information after you do private equity deals, things like cash calls and distributions that have been going into investment operations and sort of gumming up business processes. Oftentimes received by email with attachments. So there's content both in the body of the email as well as different kinds of attachments. And what's been exciting for us is the ability to automate those kinds of workflows and then focus again on the outcome, which is what does that mean in terms of collecting key information that makes it into your system or record. Well, then what happens? Well, actually you're able to report maybe to your internal and your external stakeholders and say, I can tell you about performance twice as fast as I could before we change this process. So that's the, kind of tying it back to your original question is, well, how do you measure success? Mm-hmm. It's really about tying it back into the business and working closely with the business. A lot of these initiatives is, 70% business strategy and 30% technology.
Definitely, and even in our prep meeting, we talked a lot about how automation will fail unless tied to business strategy or a business priority. And Elise, I'd love to start with you and hear, how do you identify opportunities? How do you identify, here's a manual process that needs to be automated and it's worth our budget and worth prioritizing?
So, I think you'll absolutely agree with what Harald said. It is tied to your business strategy. What is the plan for the next 5 years? Does this make sense to invest in? A lot of the things that people, I'll talk about robotics for a piece. A lot of people use robotics, to move data from one place to another. But that doesn't necessarily improve your data as an asset. You're not increasing the value of that data. You're moving it from one place to another. But if you're in the middle of, say, upgrading to a new product processor or bringing in a product processor, and there is a need for data, then it makes sense to bring in a robot to manipulate data until those APIs can be built, or until you install a platform like MuleSoft that opens up APIs in places where they don't exist. So leverage, it really does come down to the strategy, where you want to be. What you don't want to be is the example of 5 years ago when everyone ran out and just built robots. And they invested millions of dollars and then were looking under rocks for opportunities to automate. And a few years later, they were investing in de-roboting the place and finding out where the robots were going, because what they did was they took out manual processes, limited scope manual processes, and put the cost onto IT. Every time you connect to a different application, that application now has a dependency on the robot. And if they make a change, you make a change. So it created a downhill cost that no one really saw at the beginning. And so what you want to do is make sure that when you're automating, what you're automating, if it's a workflow, those can be adjusted and changed and updated rather easily. Same thing with test automation. Those things, those scripts and the way you do them, we use Selenium, those are minor modifications that we do as part of our end-to-end DevOps. Those tend to be incremental. But things that you want to invest in, those are the things that are going to move your data asset forward, whether it's short-term or it's providing value that doesn't exist. Whether it's a strategy, if you have one of our strategies is really kind of driving self-service for a certain segment of client. So if they, if they're on the phone or on the website and they want a statement, I should be able to get that statement out to them before they hang up or log off. But that's not really enough. It's also getting that data and putting it in a place so that the next time they do contact the call center or the next time they do, I have a record that they have that. So when that customer service representative is on the phone with them, they can see, oh, look, yes, I see you got a statement a couple weeks ago. And then, as that strategy evolves, can I then tell that person comes in on the 5th of every month and asks for that statement, and can I send the statement on the 4th and provide better customer service than them having to go do that? So it's really looking at how we can take the data that we have, put it in the hands of the right people, and then as we grow, use that information to forward our strategy.
Those are great points. And then to the next question around, all right, you have a business strategy, but then something like COVID happens and it puts everything into disarray. Preeti, would love to understand, for a company like Aon, how have priorities with automation changed with COVID? Has it accelerated activity, decelerated investment? And then in either case, would love to understand what are the specific examples of how it affected the business?
Sure. So of course, the spend environment has been very tough, and particularly the question around what do you need to automate, I think that becomes very critical to understand right now. As we talked about, Elise talked about, automating keystrokes. I think it again ties back to strategy. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you just automating keystrokes, or are you creating something which is net new? So within Aon, the focus has always been on, client-facing technologies and client-facing projects, which has always been a priority. So in today's day and age, I think we've been focused heavily on creating new solutions which are around COVID-19 and how we can help our clients. And a lot of them are heavily dependent on technology and automation. So the focus has been on creating net new rather than, automating the old. And, if there's something that can be done the way it is being done and it's not adding incremental value as of date, that's something that has been deprioritized.
Cool. And then Harald, with Alkymi, a lot of what you're doing is helping with document understanding and for financial services organizations, and part of that is taking someone's job, whether it's a knowledge worker doing kind of rudimentary tasks, and then making it so that they can either be up-leveled to work on higher level tasks or maybe eliminate their role. But in either case, it does change the way that humans are involved in the process. Would love to understand, for a solution like Alkymi, which is selling an automation product, what is that human interaction like, and how does it change or affect the someone's employment or the way someone does their job?
Yeah, so what we've really been focused on has been, I guess, a new class of more cognitive use cases where traditional automation approaches have not been able to crack these types of problems. And so we zeroed in on this interfacing that happened between enterprises and typically external stakeholders, where in many business processes, you are communicating with clients via email or receiving documents with business data. And what Alkymi Data Inbox, our core product, does is that it helps automate this process. But our main focus has been on automating this in concert with a human. And what this design is called a human in the loop design that makes it possible to work on use cases where you don't have to have machine learning automating 100% of the task. You can have a big difference in many of these workflows if you can automate all the kind of more repetitive types of work that sort of clogs a lot of employees' time, and a lot of very valuable employees end up spending their time sort of processing data, which really should be done in an automated way. And what we then do with a human in the loop is to take, let's say, the 30% of work that actually requires a human level of kind of cognition to be done by the human. That's what the human in the loop design enables, is to sort of bring a tremendous amount of automation to tasks that have more variety, that have greater sort of long tail of data that needs to be actioned by a human. And so as a result, the discussions we're having with clients are not about kind of eliminating teams of operations people. It's all about what else can you do with that time that you wasted. And that means, there's no one who tells us, well, we're way overstaffed in operations. Everyone is always very tightly staffed in operations. So, can you figure out how you can service a client better? Do you have the right mix of services that they're enabled for? Is there some analytics you could provide to upper management that you finally have time to do because, you're not, kind of caught up in this repetitive workflow. So that's been our focus, is to, provide a, easy to use, easy to deploy, we call it sort of democratized solution that individuals can use without having to know anything about coding or machine learning, and providing that into many workflows. And our belief is that by partnering with the business, you're opening up new opportunities, and as a result, it's really all about mostly driving top line growth, opening up new opportunities for servicing clients. That's what our interactions with clients really all about.
Great. And then Preeti and Elise, as buyers on the corporate side, you see a lot of startups like Harald, like Alkymi, and probably a lot of vendors in the ecosystem. For the priorities and initiatives that you have, how do you sift through all of these companies and identify the right ones that you should be working with? We can actually start with Preeti.
Sure. So I think the growth opportunities get the topmost priorities compared to the cost saving opportunities. So as I mentioned, if we are creating a net new solution, it could be a new solution or a new product or a new opportunity which is revenue generating, that definitely creates more opportunity. So for example, with unstructured data and how you utilize unstructured data, you can create new solutions. And the way we think about sustainability or climate change, or how we are going to market. So there is a lot of data that is captured, and data is going to be the essence of creating something net new. So anything that is driving growth is definitely prioritized compared to automating an existing process. That's been just the standard of where you want to invest in today's day and age.
I would completely agree. I think for us, unstructured data is one of our big challenges. There are multiple places in the organization where if you can solve the problem for unstructured data, if you can leverage something that has the AI and gives you the ability to, more accurately get at that data so that you can then build on it. You are building something new that you can then grow with, as opposed to, there are always opportunities where you can, look at the cost savings. And I believe that if you do get a handle on unstructured data, there are some cost savings there. But it's also, more of an investment, into the time that we free up. The business is under extreme pressure with COVID and, the programs like PPP with last minute decisions that they have to adjust to. So being able to free up some capacity is not necessarily like a cost savings of workforce reduction, but it gives you the ability to leverage that knowledge for business, enhanced work as opposed to non-business critical work, and being able to get a handle on that data, it can really transform an organization, and that's the same path that we're on as well.
Right. And yeah,
I'd just like to add,
Yep.
I'd just like to add that from a client's perspective, and particularly, some of the regional carriers who were just embarking on the journey of digitalization, this has actually been a blessing in disguise because it has accelerated some of that journey just because the way we are interacting with customers and they are interacting with customers. So it has actually been a blessing from an automation point of view.
And that brings up a good point about journey, where automation and transformation comes in stages of maturity. And I'm not sure where both of your organizations are from a maturity perspective, but would love to hear what are, let's say, the top 1 or 2 pitfalls, challenges, lessons learned about implementing these types of technologies that you can share with our audience. And Preeti, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Sure. So, the biggest challenge when you're implementing a new technology is that the data. So it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't solve the problem of bad data, any amount of good technology cannot really help. Most organizations are working towards solving the challenge of how do you understand your data. There's so much that's out there. So you might have the best AI machine learning technology that's out there, but if it doesn't solve the the supply problem of data, it's not going to work for you. This next issue is that, if you're automating a process, but the process in itself is not right, then you're going to get the same output. So you have to fix the process before actually applying technology to it. So that has been, a couple of our learnings. The third challenge that we usually try to get to is, like most of our organizations have been there forever and things have been working the way they have been. So the inertia that goes, oh, this works, and I don't know if I can trust this new technology. So applying it broadly across the firm, that's always a little bit, that comes out, there's a bit of resistance there. So what we've started doing, we do like small pilots, we test out some of those technologies, and we try to prove it one point solution at a time and see where it works. The other thing that we noticed is, like, as we are looking at emerging technologies, integrating it into our existing tech stack is very important. Like, as Elise talked about, you can't, you have to undo the whole RPA system if you're doing it one piece at a time and not connecting it to strategy. So I think that those are some of the learnings that we've had, when we got onto this journey about 5 to 6 years ago, and we've made our mistakes and learned through it.
I agree with everything Preeti said. For us, it's if I'm looking at a process to automate, am I going as far upstream as I need to go and as far downstream as I can go? Am I, is the process that's in place the right process? Or could that process be streamlined given the technology changes that are already in place? Can I skip a couple steps and use the technology to, move us further downstream or further, start further upstream, and really kind of, making sure that I'm not automating what we call a bad process and it further entrenching it? Or can I, look at the process end to end and redefine what it needs to do given the current business environment, given the needs, given the tools that we have and the upgrades and data that we've had over the years? Can I just bypass that and reconstruct a new process that's more efficient and delivers data in a more timely manner? And those are the things that we found, we do things incrementally. We'll, just like Preeti said, we'll start with a small POC. I can give one example we did was for COVID with PPP. We were, everything was evolving so quickly, but what the automation team was brought in and we were shown the process map that operations had put together, and they identified the pain points in the process that they could see. And within a weekend, we had parsed the PPP application. And once we had that, we were able to say, now I can move this upstream. I can put the robot in a in the inbox where the emails may come, and I can read through each one of those mails from a customer, and I can mark that mail as complete, that the application's complete, or the application's missing data. So I can help sort up at the front. And then I can also move it downstream by taking that data and putting it into a downstream application. And I can do it by an API. I don't necessarily have to go through a UI. So once we were able to kind of, get the main piece and get the data, then our opportunities of the automation that we could offer upstream and downstream really became apparent. It became a huge opportunity for us to be able to show that within a week, what all we could do in order to help the process. And I think that those, sometimes challenges for operations become, opportunities for technology.
Definitely. And I think those quick wins really help showcase how great the technology and the potential for it. And Harald, I'd love to hear from you. As you are going to market and selling, how do you enable your clients to have these quick wins to show the benefit early, and then help them expand that effort?
Yeah, well, absolutely. From just listening to Elise and Preeti, kudos to Aon and CIT for having leaders like this kind of drive this sort of change into the organization. I think they're exactly right. Is that you have to focus on things that are important. And I guess a counterintuitive perspective from a startup is sometimes you sort of want to iterate on projects maybe at the sort of edge of your enterprise that is sort of like, this is like a little corner that we should try to try this new innovative technology on before we start with what's actually important, maybe in the more of the core of the business. And we've had two companies, one took that approach of let's test it out in the corner, and of course when at the end it's successful and you try to take that back up to the senior leadership and say, we should use this technology, it doesn't really get the attention it deserves because it was, proven out on something that wasn't important. On the other customer approach was one to work on something that's much more core to the business, maybe interfacing with clients and onboarding clients. And, that in that instance, the use case is successfully deployed because it was important. And so it's just interesting to see how organizations that have that DNA of using innovative technology end up kind of applying it in a way. And our focus now is on doing POCs that are 1 to 2 weeks, so that we can demonstrate how the product works, see it on the client's data. And that means we've gone through and gotten security certifications like SOC 2 and pen testing and other kinds of ways that give clients the confidence that if they're, of course, they might be able to anonymize the data or otherwise mask it. But otherwise, we make sure that the data that they share can be used in a POC, so those results can become apparent. And of course, seeing is believing, and we love clients to use our product.
Definitely. And Harald, in the case of Alkymi, you are helping with document understanding. How much of that is a cognitive function and a question to the panelists as well as when you're thinking through automation opportunities, how much of them are just general manual tasks that require very little thinking? And are we at a point with technology where we're able to accomplish some of the more actual thinking tasks, reasoning tasks, or are you really just more so exploring the very general basic ones?
But I'll answer quickly first, I guess, and then hand it off. But my thought on that is some things have changed in that you have an amazing new set of technologies and machine learning that can enable a tremendous amount of value. But I think a lot of people have stepped their toe on that technology because there wasn't enough thinking done about the business. Who was going to use this? How was it going to fit back into the business? And so I think a lot of maybe even people listening to this have gone through these kind of AI projects that have gotten stuck, where you couldn't quite get into production, you couldn't get out of the lab and into a business process. And I think what's changing now is you're really thinking about how does it get deployed, and that's a lot of software engineering. It's a lot of integration into the workflow. It's interfacing with end users so they can accomplish their workflow faster, efficiently, in a way that's has a lot of controls built into it, and of course APIs, so it's easy to integrate into the process. And so I think that's this idea that you're providing a business solution, not a technology toolkit.
I would love to hear from yes. Yep, Preeti.
So I'll actually give a couple of examples where we've implemented, we've productized it and implemented it. So one of them is a natural language processing technology that we are utilizing today, where it enables our clients to do a two-way text messaging with their clients. So, this is something that we've co-developed with an emerging tech partner and we are offering to clients. So that is, how do you get to that decision-making layer? Another one is where we're utilizing, property analytics data and incorporating that into underwriting models and utilizing that information from a decision support perspective. I think those are very strong use cases that we are seeing, particularly as we look at new areas like cyber. There's so much that's going on in that space. Think about food and ag or sustainability, and the next big problem around business interruption, what's going to hit us. If you look at all those areas, there are a lot of smart tools that are out there and emerging technology, which we are testing out as we speak. But particularly those two, we've had tremendous success so far.
And I would say that, what we, for our journey, the unstructured data, is definitely something that is core of what we're looking for right now to try to solve that problem. But, while we're doing that, we're also moving forward with our other automation opportunities, like the testing opportunities, test automation, and really making that part of the fabric of our technology applications, and looking at workflow automation tools that allow us to, move the conversation for service and operations and really kind of streamline those processes. But, as part of our strategy, we continue to keep our eye on this space, and we are working with partnerships and looking to see how we can handle the unstructured data. Because once we can crack that, then the application within our space, is multiples. So, when we look at where we're going, that's part of the strategy, is how can we do that? How can we, leverage that data in a way that we have not been able to before?
And actually, this is a great segue into some of the questions that we had. One of the attendees was wondering, when I guess both of you are mentioning unstructured data, what type of unstructured data is this? And if you're able to provide any details on specific data sets that you're looking to use.
Sure. So Aon receives, countless documents through the insurance broking operations. And these can be around claims and how we are looking at just getting all this information from our carriers, and now helping our carriers process all that information and utilizing it so they can do a better estimate of how they can improve their operations. So I think that is one way that we've been utilizing on some of the documents that we're receiving from carriers. That has been effective in how we have been able to work with them. I think in the last year or so, we've extracted about 1 million data points, but I'm not very sure about that. But it's been enormous in the efforts that we've made there.
Yeah, Elise, are there any particular examples of unstructured data within your ecosystem that you're particularly, interested in leveraging?
So with leases and loans, there's always the contract side of, when we send out a contract and we get it back, where the material changes, how do we find those, systemically without somebody, looking for those changes, and they can be slight. How can we take that and do that? A lot of our business, we have in our commercial services, is heavily invoiced, or remittances, where if you think about all your clients having a different format for an invoice that they may send you. And, some have their logos for their names, some have, everything embedded in a table. I mean, if you can just think about the variety of every customer submitting an invoice or a remittance in a different format, how do you get to that? There are some invoices you receive with 4 things that say total. So it's something like trying to hit it with OCR, plain OCR, you're going to have a lot of totals. And so it's trying to, work through that data and trying to, over time, recognize a large customer, may send you this invoice, and then over time start to recognize that and be able to extract that data. That's what we're talking about. But the variety that you can get, and it's impossible to say, here's our invoice format, please use this when you send us a format. Everybody has a different system. Everyone has a different way of submitting those types of invoices, and that it's part of the business. So, though the variation across these is significant.
So the last question, because we do have to end in a couple of minutes, is, and at least going back to the quote that you said earlier around challenges and operations become opportunities in technology. What areas are folks expecting in the future, or hope to see more focus and investment in with regards to automation? What are maybe those gaps that exist in the ecosystem that you would love to see, folks start tackling? Harald, I know that, obviously you're a player in the space, but curious to hear as well your perspective, and we can start with you on, your excitement in the space.
Yeah, I mean, automation is a tremendous, opportunity. It's kind of the first wave has rolled over the enterprise with a lot of kind of rules-based and system to system integration being automated. And, I think that the big opportunity is that a lot of these automation initiatives have been very curated where it's been, large service center business processes, or it's been kind of major data pipelines running where IT has engaged and applied these automation technologies. I think the big opportunity is to provide, business solutions into the line of business where oftentimes these automation technologies have not reached, and to do it in a way that's easy to deploy, to make it, easy to integrate, and not, require someone to write code to use the application. That's been our focus with Alkymi Data Inbox, is to give people that have been sort of left without automation capabilities, to give them a tool that they can use easily in their business process, and focus on doing that really, really well for many firms.
Yep, democratization is something that we're absolutely tracking as a firm as well. And so Preeti, for yourself and Aon, what types of innovations are you excited about or hope to see, come out?
So, building on what Harald talked about, I think digitalization of the incumbent's journey, we are looking at it, as Aon and on behalf of our clients, because as a trusted advisor, we have a responsibility towards our clients. So that's something that we are heavily focused on. There is a big shift that is coming in from how we are looking at data, what will happen in the future, which is more like predictive data to prescriptive data, like what can happen in the future or how you would want things to happen in the future. So I think that's going to be critical. With so much data that is available today, and how that data gets utilized and incorporated in underwriting models and how we are utilizing it is going to be a key factor in the next few years, because data is going to become a commodity, and how you're utilizing that information and incorporating it will make a key difference in what your success looks like in the future. So those are some of the top areas that we are focused on. We've been looking at heavily into making some of our machine learning processes better. We've invested heavily through our innovation centers, and looking to build new solutions and products here.
And I think for us, we're a little bit further behind in the moving to the predictive, and we are heavily investing in that and looking at that. That's and that with the unstructured. But for us, I think our focus is getting the right data to the person who needs it at that time, and not overwhelming with data that's not necessarily needed. And then taking the data that we have and using that to make decisions or preempt, how do I identify a customer before they hit collections? Being able to leverage the data that I have to be able to do something preemptive and improve that customer experience, and look at the initiatives that we have and support those with the automation that's needed, and not automate for automation's sake, and making sure that we're providing what's needed and nothing more.
That's a great point. Well, with that, I'd love to thank our panelists for joining us today and sharing their perspective and insight. It's been, I'm honored to have had the opportunity to moderate this panel. Thank you to the audience for coming out. For this panel, we'll actually be doing a write-up, and you can find the recording of the video online on our YouTube. And if you hope to check out our past State of Artificial Intelligence webinar, that's also on our YouTube and on our blog. So for everybody, stay tuned for some other webinars we're going to be producing in the future. Hope everybody has a good rest of the summer, and thanks again for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.